think the best player I played with at West Ham technically would have to be Trevor. He was a little bit ahead of his time. I know that's an old saying about Martin Peters, isn't it? But in the way he played back then, he reminds me, looking back, of what Kevin De Bruyne does when he's playing for Manchester City, in that he plays balls blind into the box. In other words, he might be facing one way, and he'll then just pitch the ball into the box on the basis that there will be somebody in there to get on the end of it. And that's exactly what Trevor used to do. It's one of the things I picked up of Pop Robson, that Trevor could be like going one way, but he would just put a ball into the box expecting one of the strikers to be on the end of it. And in that respect, he was probably a little bit ahead of his time. I picked that up quickly and realised that at any time when Trevor was on the ball, it could come into the box and I would make a move and get on the end of them. So I think technically Trevor was the best I played with at West Ham, certainly. On the other hand, you'd have to look at Billy Bonds and say he maybe had more effect on the team than anyone else because of his presence. He was Billy Bonds, he was West Ham. He was what everyone wanted to be. Big man, rugged, got on with it, no nonsense. He was just everything for me that represented the club. And I wanted to be him in some respects. I wanted to be like the front man who was a bit like Billy Bonds, but obviously Billy played at the back. I wanted the fans to want me to be that, to look at me and think he represents me. That's what I'd be like if I was playing for West Ham. Those lads who were out there on the chicken run or in the North Bank with the shirts on, with the West Ham shirts. That was the nearest they would ever get to playing for West Ham. Well, I was lucky because I was out there playing for West Ham, and I was a northern lad. I wasn't from East London, and that's what I wanted. And I realised that Billy was somebody that the fans really, really liked. And so in that respect, even though technically he wasn't as good a player as Trevor, he had more effect on the team, probably, or had the most effect on the team of any of the players.
What about now?
And now, are we talking about West Ham players? For me, Mark Noble would be what Bill was. He represents the fans. He's out there giving everything he's got. He's a West Ham fan himself. He understands the club. I think he gets it. He gets what West Ham is. So when I see him out there playing, I feel that he'll galvanise some of the other lads who are in there who don't get it quite so much. And I don't think the foreign players quite understand what our club is. And I think they have to be taught that. And I think Mark Noble teaches by example out there. Again, technically, probably not the best footballer that West Ham have got. But he's one man. When I see the team and I see that he's in it, I always feel we've got more of a chance because he'll get the lads playing. So obviously we've got some very good technical players. In some respects, we have better technical players than a lot of teams who play against us. But those teams, and I think I saw Gary Neville make a comment about West Ham that we have some good players, but maybe the team ethic isn't quite there, whereas some teams don't have players as technically efficient as or proficient as West Ham do, but their teamwork is better than ours. So, I mean, you'd have to say that Haller technically must be a very good player for us to have spent all that money on him, yet he hasn't quite kind of found his feet yet in the Premier Division, and he hasn't found his feet playing, say, at Gillingham, against a third-tier team in a pitch that maybe he's not used to playing on. And I think those lads have to get used to that, even though technically they're very good. So for me, Mark Noble, even though people might be laughing at me for saying that, but he represents the club for me, and I think that's important. No, he's right. He's read that somewhere, and he's right. When I was a little boy, the only match you could see on television was the cup final. So the first Saturday in May, or whenever the cup final was, that's when you sat down and watched it from 8 o'clock in the morning right through. And I watched every single cup final. I could tell you every single result of every match from about 1950 up till 1980. I could tell you who won, who played in it, who scored in all of those cup finals. And then after I played in the cup final in 1980, I haven't watched one since. So Christopher's right, and congratulations on sailing around the world as well. Willie Young wasn't a vocal player really, he just got on with it and was very physical. David Leary thought things through, and he didn't know what was going on. Well, he knew what was going on, but he didn't know how to cope with it, he didn't know what to do, and he wanted instructions from the bench. So yeah, he was constantly, in the first 10, 12 minutes, he was shouting over to the bench, to Don Howe and the manager, and saying, who goes, what shall we drop in with Pearson? Shall one of us go in with Pearson, or do we let him run free, or does one of the midfield players drop in and pick him up? And what are we doing? And by the time the bench had sorted out their problem, we'd scored. We'd got that goal, Trevor put away, and then they realised what we were doing, and then they coped with it better. But no, and in the answer to the second part of the question, there was no change of tactic at half time. John just said, well done, you're doing what you're doing. We won up. What we've done has worked in that we've stifled them a little bit. And I'd always go back as well to what I've said for a long time, is that they had two terrific strikers in Sunderland and Stapleton, and Billy and Alvin just never really let them get a kick in terms of real danger in getting behind. So no, there was no change of tactic. John was fairly confident that what we were doing was good. The first shirt I had was the one with the collar on, the Admiral one with the collar on. That was when I arrived in '77, and I don't think we changed that until after the cup final. But I really liked playing in the 80-81 shirt. I really felt good in that, the Adidas one. And as it's a good question in that you do see that, and it does bring you back. It's a bit like music, really, where it can take you back all those years. You hear a song and you actually feel you were back in that period. And when I see the 80-81 shirt, there are some shirts and some strips that you do feel better in, but I really enjoyed that one. And perhaps it's maybe it's the other way around as well, because I got a lot of goals in that season. Maybe it felt better, but I did feel good in that shirt, and I looked at our team. I think sometimes you can, in certain strips, you actually look physically bigger and stronger in some shirts, and that was one of those. I really enjoyed that one. I thought it was one of the better ones that I played in at West Ham. These days, I think they've gone back this season to almost a kind of tribute to that 1980 thing, haven't they, with the white shirts, trying to make some sort of a recognition of what we did back then. I never really gave it a thought. Just as long as I had a pair of shorts to put on, I was in the team, and I was happy with that. I do take the point that sometimes you do feel better in certain strips. I think even to this day, the 1980 Cup final is the only one where both teams had away strips, which is unusual in itself. It's like one of those trick questions, isn't it? And I think the reason, I can't remember the reason was, I think it was maybe we thought it was our lucky strip playing in white, and Arsenal had they won the cup previously with the yellow, so that was, but I think it's the only one that has ever taken place where both teams played in what would be considered not to be the first team strip. But I wasn't bothered which, just as long as I was out there playing, that would suit me.
Lampard hitting it straight at Steve Sims, but it might come for Cross. And indeed it has. He's beaten Sims with that one. Cross now, looking to curl, and a beautiful goal!
That wasn't a great question in Nigel's, was it?
No.
For a clever man, you'd think he'd come up with something a bit better than that. Which shorts would you rather play? You know?